So participating in the Wisdom Wednesday webinars is an opportunity for you to learn from leading experts on topics related to healthy eating, active living, communications, advocacy, and more. So today's webinar, Growing Little Minds for Healthy Futures, will explore the collaboration between Healthy Palmetto, the South Carolina Department of Social Services, and Public Health. Grow Outdoors SC is dedicated to increasing children's access to naturalized outdoor play and learning spaces. Misty Pearson will explore the statewide impact of this initiative and share some future plans to expand these environments in childcare centers, including those serving children with special needs. And before I actually turn this presentation over to Misty and give you an overview of Misty's background, I actually want to give a little bit of context for Grow Outdoors SC as it relates to some other work in South Carolina. So Holzbeyer serves as one of two backbone organizations for a statewide collaborative effort called Healthy Palmetto. We serve as a backbone organization alongside the Department of Public Health's Nutrition, Physical Activity, and Obesity Prevention section. And the purpose of this collaborative is to unify and mobilize organizations that are working on healthy eating and active living efforts in South Carolina. And currently, Healthy Palmetto, we're sort of in the process right now of finalizing our action plan that will be in place over the next several years. And while we don't quite have that finalized yet, we do know that one of the priorities for that collaborative effort will be to improve early care and education environments. And one of those collaborative actions will be supporting and elevating the work of Grow Outdoors SC. So I just wanted to share that little bit of information about the alignment and the collaborative effort around Grow Outdoors SC. So my name is Kelsey Sanders, if I've not had the pleasure of meeting you, and I'm the Community Relations Manager for Holzbeyer. And I'm very excited to welcome Misty Pearson today. Misty is the Early Care and Education Specialist consultant at the South Carolina Department of Public Health. She works with partners to integrate nutrition and physical activity policy systems and environmental changes into South Carolina's early care and education system. She leads Grow Outdoors South Carolina, an initiative to increase young children's access to naturalized play and learning environments while attending childcare. Misty holds a Master's of Education in Early Childhood from the University of South Carolina and a Bachelor of Science in Community Health Education from the University of North Carolina at Greensboro. Thank you again for joining us today, and we look forward to learning more about Grow Outdoors SC.
All right, great. All right. Well, thank you everybody for joining, like Kelsey said, during your lunch hour. Hopefully this will inspire you to go outdoors for a little bit after we have this presentation. So hopefully it won't take the entire length of time and you'll have a little bit of time to go outdoors. So let's start with why early care and education. So I'm curious if any of you know how many children under the age of 5 that aren't yet enrolled in kindergarten attend some form of childcare weekly. All right, so were there any guesses on the percentage?
We have 60%, 80%. Those are our guesses.
Okay, so it is around 59%. So whoever said 60, you were pretty spot on there. So 60% of children under the age of 5 are in some type of out-of-home care weekly. And so that's that birth to 5 age group. And so that really gets to the point of this quote from CDC, which they included in one of their recent documents about the reach of this setting. So nationally, it's about 60%. In South Carolina, it's an estimated 65% of children under age of 5 have both parents in the workforce. And so, that makes this setting critically important to health, setting up healthy behaviors and healthy habits that will carry forward into adulthood. So that's why in our section, we have a huge focus on early care and education. So a little bit about how we as a section at the Department of Public Health, how we determine what we focus on. So more than a decade ago, CDC developed this spectrum of opportunities to identify how healthy growth and obesity prevention policies and activities can be embedded into state early care and education systems. So there's a longer name, but typically it's just called the spectrum of opportunities. And it really focuses on 9 areas that states can consider to work in as they work to improve these environments. Every state is slightly different, and much larger states can have early care and education systems at the local level or the county level. So in some places, you can take this and use it in a community setting or local setting. But for South Carolina, we do have a state level system. And so we function kind of within these 9 areas. So our section, we're just going to call it MPAO for short. We have been working with partners for more than 15 years to improve the early care and education environment. And so I wanted to share a few of our examples before we move into Grow Outdoors specifically. So until 2018, there was a regulation in place for childcare facilities that said they need to provide outdoor play opportunities for children. So until 2018, which really wasn't that long ago, there was no requirement on how often the programs had to take children outdoors. So a program could technically take a child out, once a week for outdoor play, and they would be meeting the regulation. So in 2018, the word daily was added to that regulation. So now child care providers that are licensed are required to take children outdoors daily for outdoor play. We've also worked with the Child and Adult Care Food Program System. We work with them to develop a GIS map that highlights participation among child care providers. And then we identified areas of high need and low participation. And then we've also partnered with Child Care Food Program to implement farm to preschool is what it was originally called. So really now farm to early care and education. And then what's really unique and special about the early childhood system is they have their own network of TA providers. So they have programs or organizations they fund to provide technical assistance to providers. So to help them meet regulations, to help them meet their professional development requirements. And so some of those networks are like South Carolina Child Care Resource and Referral, or you have programs like First Steps that have local partnerships, or First Steps 4K that provide technical assistance. So we've trained those organizations and programs on obesity prevention so that they are familiar with what the best practices are. And then they, in turn, as boots on the ground, can help programs improve the environment. And then lastly, I'm sorry, y'all skipping with the slides here. Lastly is the quality rating and improvement system. And that has really been where the bulk of our effort has occurred over the last 15 years. So in South Carolina, it's a voluntary system, but child care programs that want to meet higher standards, and these are standards beyond nutrition and physical activity. But if they choose to meet higher standards and they want to accept a child that has they used to be called vouchers, but basically a subsidized care. If they want to accept a child that has that, they're now called scholarships. They have to participate in the quality rating and improvement system. So here it's called ABC Quality. And back in 2012, we collaborated with this part of the early care and education system to integrate nutrition and physical activity standards. So those have been in place for more than 10 years now, where any program that participates in that system is required to meet certain standards around nutrition and physical activity. And that is really what led us to Grow Outdoors. So one of those standards at the time, as it related to physical activity, was they had to take children outdoors twice a day, and there's a certain length of time depending on the age of the child. And so we needed to help providers. And so I'll get into a little more detail about that, but Grow Outdoors grew out of that. And so what Grow Outdoors is an initiative of the South Carolina Department of Social Services, their Division of Early Care and Education, and the South Carolina Department of Public Health. So it is primarily funded by the Department of Social Services, but I lead the state level initiative. So we talked a little bit about why the setting is important. I just want to touch on this briefly, why this time frame is important. If you have any children or know people with children, you probably heard that the first 5 years of a child's life are a period of extraordinary growth and development. With 90% of brain growth occurring by age 5, these years lay the foundation for a child's future health and well-being, learning, and behavior. And this is the time frame when their brains are highly plastic, which means they are particularly responsive to learning from their environment, which for many children, roughly 65% in South Carolina, a large part of their day is in the childcare setting. So it's really important that we focus on that environment where they're spending a large amount of time. But you might be wondering, why outdoors? Why specifically outdoors? Maybe not specifically just physical activity or healthy eating. But for these two agencies, what really drew our attention to this was this: we need children outdoors, but they need to be engaged. And so there are currently, I think it's roughly 2,400 regulated childcare programs with the capacity to reach almost 200,000 children in South Carolina. And that is ages birth to 12, because you do have programs that offer after school care. And so the majority of children in childcare attend for an extended period of time. It's often 8 to 10 hours a day. When they're there, it's where they spend most of their waking hours, they receive most of their meals, and the largest opportunity for physical activity. And research has shown that while it seems odd, you see children and they're very active, they spend 70 to 85% of their time being sedentary while in childcare. But we do know that increased time outdoors is a significant predictor of children's physical activity. So, from the public health lens, we want children outdoors. We know that it'll increase physical activity. It'll get them away from screens or less screen time. But looking through the early childhood lens, there is a lot of benefit just from children being outdoors. It promotes creativity and exploration, imagination, and problem solving. You often see more cooperative play among children when they're outdoors, and they can have more risky play, which is a balance when it comes to childcare, because they want to keep children safe, but there are a lot of benefits to children participating in risky play and learning about themselves and what they're able to accomplish. The other part of this whole initiative is that being outdoors is an opportunity to connect children with nature. And those connections during those first 5 years, that is when that relationship is developed. And so if you want children to have a positive connection to nature and enjoy being outdoors, then they need more time outdoors. And so for us, it makes more time to create environments where they can go outdoors, but we need those environments to be diverse and engaging so that the children and the caregivers will want to be outdoors. All right, so creating the spark. So as I mentioned, what really led to this was when we integrated those nutrition and physical activity standards in 2012. Providers pretty quickly came to us and said, we are happy to take our children outdoors twice a day for whatever the required amount of time is, but they are bored and they're quickly asking to come back in. And I think, these two photos, especially the one on the left, this is an actual childcare program in South Carolina, gives you a good look at why children might be bored. If you were a child and you had to go out in this type of environment twice a day, let's just say an hour each time, 5 days a week, you can see there's not a lot to do. Beyond that, there tends to be a lot of behavior issues when there's not a lot to do. You see a lot of sand throwing, because there's usually a lot of sand. If there's portable play equipment such as balls, that is often thrown over the fence. In the picture on the right, there's quite a bit of mulch. So they're not the most engaging environments. And so we really heard that call. And so we started to do some research, and then we found a program in our own backyard at North Carolina State called the Natural Learning Initiative. And they had been doing this work for many, many years. And they had been, I guess they started early 2000s, really building the research on physical activity and the outdoor environment. So this group at NC State, they are landscape designers. They're located in the College of Design. But this research they had been developing really was about getting children physically active, and then how do you create an outdoor space that promotes that physical activity and that diversity of play and engagement. So here are 3 examples of some research they did, 3 different types of facilities. Center A is grassy area and play equipment. And you do see that a lot. You'll see some childcare programs that have lovely grass with a lot of manufactured play equipment. And then the middle one, Center B, had pathways to move children throughout the entire play space. It had vegetation integrated, and it also had manufactured play equipment. And then Center C had both natural and play equipment, but they were separated. They were not really combined. So you'd have areas of natural material environment, but then you would have the play areas separated, not necessarily integrated with nature. So let me ask you, which one do you think in their research showed the highest levels of physical activity and engagement? Any guesses? Center A, B, or C?
We've got a few different guesses. We've seen the whole gamut now. We've got an A, a C, and a B, and another B.
Okay.
A C.
All right, so you said it was a mix, right?
It's a mix, yeah.
Okay. I would be curious to hear why people think that, but I will show you the response here. So Center B, when they did evaluation and measurement of this using accelerometers, the most active play areas measured within a 1-week time frame was at Center B. And it's those facilities that have pathways that connect the different play settings. They have vegetation and play equipment. And a big part of this is the pathway system. So if you have a pathway that links all the play areas or moves them throughout the entire play space, is when you typically see physically active behaviors increase. Does anybody want to share why they thought A or C? We'll go back here for that one.
One person said that the pictures maybe threw them off, but now that you've kind of explained the pathway piece, it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, sometimes when you see large grassy areas, I think there is a assumption that, oh, there's lots of running and playing that happens. And there is,
Right.
but it's usually just for a short amount of time. So,
Yeah.
okay.
And then, yeah, even A looks like there's a lot of different stuff to do. So you would think maybe that one, but yeah, it's interesting.
Yes. All right. So we will keep moving on here. Get past this. Okay. I'm not expecting you to read this in detail, but what I really want you to focus on is the image on the right. So with this research they were doing, they do behavior mapping before a site is renovated, which is when they improve an outdoor space. They call it a renovation. So before is when you would see that the sedentary activity was the highest. And then after renovation, and then you can see, and I'll have a more close-up picture of the pathway, is when the moderate increases. So moderate is now the highest level, and vigorous has also increased. And another part of all their research is that how the play settings are connected to each other. Are they adjacent to each other, where they're centrally located? That increases physical activity. And that larger sites, surprisingly, are associated with less activity, but a larger activity setting. And I'll explain more about activity settings. Larger settings are associated with higher activity. And then when you have things like, balls and wheeled toys, that also will increase physical activity. So basically, the research has proved over and over again that the type and distribution of the activity are influenced by the form and the content of the outdoor space. So here's a little bit better picture of that. So you can see on the left here, this is before any renovation. And here on the right, you see the pathway that's been added into the play space, and there are some additional settings. So you can clearly see the difference in how children are moving just simply with the addition of the pathway and a few additional settings. And you'll notice the settings typically are off the pathway, so the pathway again is what's leading them throughout the entire space. So all of this research that they were creating and developing, really, they kind of, I don't know how to explain it. I guess they put it all together and they created this model or strategy that they call preventing obesity by design. And so again, that really appealed to us on the public health side because it really was about obesity prevention at a child care facility in the outdoors. It could not have been more perfect for what we were looking for. And so it's an early childhood health promotion strategy that's activated through the built environment and naturalization interventions in the outdoor spaces of child care facilities. So simply, it is the built environment, but at child care facilities. So it's trying to improve that outdoor space so that children are more likely to be active and engaged. And so within this model they created, it's called POD, Preventing Obesity by Design. They have some core best practices, and their evaluation showed that when these best practices are followed, children move more. The physical activity increased by 22% without any instruction from the caregiver, and that the site layout attributes such as the pathway, it needs to either be a single or a double loop. It can't be a straight. It needs to be a looping, curvy pathway. That those were also associated with higher levels of physical activity. And within their best practice indicators, there is always a component of having designated vegetable gardens. And so, of course, that demonstrated food awareness. So these are just a snapshot of the best practices. What we really focus on with Grow Outdoors is number one, that there are 10 or more play settings, and number two, that there is the looping curvy pathway. But you can see that within these best practices, it's not only about the setting, but it's also about having trees for shade. It's about having the fruit and vegetable gardens. It's about having then natural loose materials and the portable play equipment. You really need all of this to create the highest quality environment for children. And then what they found beyond the physical activity is that children, when they spend time in these environments that have also been naturalized, they have better focus of attention. They can practice resilience and problem solving, and they do score better in tests. I think that's just across the board. When children spend time outdoors, there are lots of other benefits. And it's also an opportunity to get staff outdoors. And like the earlier picture I showed, if you're the staff member and you have absolutely no shade and it's 98 degrees, you're not going to want to stay out there very long either. And so creating an environment that is suitable for children to engage in and play is also beneficial for the caregiver. They need places that are shady. You want them to be in an environment where they are comfortable and don't mind spending time outdoors. And the key to all of this is it's meant to be incremental. So you can go online at the Natural Learning Initiative and see the beautiful photos of sites that have renovated, but it's really important to point out that this is meant to be incremental. It is not extreme childcare makeover. It shouldn't be that you go in, you have a new design plan, and you renovate everything in 6 months. Staff need to learn how to use the space. Children need time to adapt to the new space and become familiar with how each setting works and what each setting is about. So this really is a 3 to 5 year plan of incremental development and renovation. And the message we always try to leave programs with is, but it's never done. Your outdoor space should always be changing and evolving, just like your indoor classroom. You need to switch out materials. You may want to change up settings occasionally. So it never should be a once it's done, it's done. It should be a continual process. So through all of that, we learned quite a bit because we had been working with programs since we connected with the Natural Learning Initiative in 2013 until 2018. And what we learned is that when we talked about making improvements, you can add a stage for dramatic play, or you can add a playhouse or a fruit and vegetable garden. Providers want design assistance. They don't want just, okay, well, I'm going to add a garden or I want to add a playhouse. They want the full shebang. They want somebody to tell them where to put everything. Please come in and design my space and show me what the entire space could look like. And so with that, we knew if we were going to provide that, they needed more support than we could provide at the state level. We can help get a design plan, but we cannot help really with the implementation of a design plan. We don't know who local contractors are, or, we can't necessarily help you find volunteers. So we realized through the process, they need a lot more help at the local level than we were able to provide from our positions in the state. When we initially started this, we just called it Preventing Obesity by Design South Carolina. And what we realized is it is more than obesity prevention. It is obesity prevention, healthy behaviors, but also, like I mentioned, on the early childhood side. So we rebranded to a name that better reflects both agencies, which is how we came to Grow Outdoors South Carolina, because it can be about growing the space. It's growing the overall child, is growing the health of the child. It can be growing fruits and vegetables. So that's a better name, we felt, than having one that specifically addressed obesity prevention. We also realized we needed some type of state level infrastructure if we wanted programs to follow this very specific model. And so that's been a slow process. That took some time to figure that out, but slow and steady worked in our favor. Because we had been doing this little by little for several years, we had been learning lessons all along, and then COVID hit. And one of the messages that came out of COVID was go outdoors, spend more time outside. And so that worked in our favor because we were well positioned when a lot of the federal dollars came down for childcare, that we were able to step into that space and say, we have an initiative here. There's a lot of these dollars coming down that can help drive, hopefully, children outdoors. And that leads us to Grow Outdoors. So all of those lessons funneled into this, and we rebranded in 2020 to Grow Outdoors South Carolina. And we follow that model from NC State. So we follow that Preventing Obesity by Design model. And in December 2023, we then expanded the partnership to include the National Wildlife Federation, Early Childhood Health Outdoors. They are a unit that does design, and they too were built on the Natural Learning Initiative model. They are an extension of the Natural Learning Initiative. So we've contracted with them, and then we're still contracting with the Natural Learning Initiative to do our evaluation. So what Grow Outdoors is really these three big buckets here. So information and resources, professional development, and design assistance, and we will go through each of these. So information and resources. So through a soon-to-be developed website, Grow Outdoors will provide resources and information related to the benefits of children spending time outdoors and promote the use of creative and affordable ways to improve the outdoor environment for early childhood teachers and community leaders. The Natural Learning Initiative is creating resources for providers and technical assistance providers to assist with making those changes in the outdoor space. So this is an example of the website here on the left. It is not fully live, but there is a landing page. So the growoutdoorssc.org is functional. And so they will have lots of resources, and that'll be for any childcare program in the state. They'll be able to access the information on that page. Other resources, they're developing an installation guide. And so it will be for contractors or volunteers or parents or other technical assistance providers who want to help programs create specific activity settings. So it'll give the detail of what is this activity setting? What are the things you need to know? What are the typical materials you need? And what do you need to know from a childcare licensing regulation perspective? That piece is really important. And another resource that I'm really excited about that we're creating is a book that's going to introduce families and childcare teachers to the benefits of naturalized outdoor play and learning environments. So it's really going to be a picture book for young children that shows this is what the outdoor environment looks like as a couple of children engage with the different activity settings during their playtime while they're attending childcare. Professional development is a big part of this. And so for several years, we have made a course that the Natural Learning Initiative developed available to state regulatory staff. So your child care licensing staff, the ABC quality assessors, and others, because we want to establish a consistent foundational understanding of what this type of environment is. I think it's probably important to note that the regulations in this state really were developed for manufactured play equipment. So your typical playground, not a naturalized outdoor play and learning environment. So it's not only a learning opportunity for childcare providers, we also have to educate those who go in and assess and monitor these programs to get everybody on the same page. In addition, we will be offering some courses online through the website. They're called short courses that NLI, the Natural Learning Initiative, has. They have a gardening course, and those will be made available free to all child care providers as well. And then lastly, we will have clinic hours for programs that maybe never want to go through the design assistance, which I'll talk about next, but maybe a program just wants an expert to answer a question. Hey, what do I do in my space? Here's a picture of it. Can you give me some suggestions, or what would you recommend? So we will have clinic hours starting in November where they can connect with a licensed landscape architect at the Natural Learning Initiative. They'll have 30-minute slots where they can talk about their site and get expert advice. And then the exciting part, I guess, the design assistance. So, like I mentioned, programs were asking for design assistance. So when a provider wants to go further than just basic learning and skill development, we partner with Early Childhood Health Outdoors and the Natural Learning Initiative to plan, design, and incrementally develop and evaluate the naturalized environment that's really created for their space. So this design assistance is targeted for ages 0 to 5 for programs in the quality rating and improvement system. So right now, this opportunity is only available for ABC quality child care centers. We hope to in the future open it up to family home providers, but right now it is just for centers. And it is a 5-year funded initiative. We hope it will continue after 5 years, but right now, 5 years, we hope to have at least 100 programs, a little bit more maybe, that'll receive a design plan and go through this process. All right, so what will they receive? If a center chooses to apply for this, it is a competitive application. They will be enrolled in the online course through the Natural Learning Initiative, and they receive 24 hours of credit through the South Carolina Professional Development System. They engage in a professional learning community. They receive funding to have a professional site survey of the outdoor space. The landscape design that they receive from ECHO is an actual master plan of their outdoor space. And then they get action planning support. So what's going to be your first phase of implementation? The Department of Social Services is providing a nice amount of funding to get started. And then they have just ongoing networking and professional development learning opportunities. And so this process is usually a year to about a year and a half for them to go from the beginning, from the course, all the way to the end of getting their design plan and action planning. So here are our current 2024. And like I think I said, we launched officially statewide in December 2023. But before that, for years, we had been working, trying to figure out what this would look like. So there are more sites that have a design plan that we still count as Grow Outdoor sites. But this was the first group once we launched statewide in partnership with the Early Childhood Health Outdoors group and the Natural Learning Initiative. So we started with 20 sites. We currently have 18, and you can see they're spread across the state. So we're really intentional about trying to make sure that we select programs in each region of the state to participate. Here is what a timeline looks like. The application is usually November, December. They go through a couple of months of the professional development, and then design workshops happen around May to August. This cohort, they've been one-on-one design workshops. So that team, the Early Childhood Health Outdoors team that's based in Colorado, in their contract, they have hired staff to work in South Carolina specifically. So we currently have 3 landscape designers that are dedicated to South Carolina, a design manager position, currently vacant, and an education and engagement coordinator that are all dedicated to South Carolina. And they either live here or right across the border in North Carolina. So they're very centrally located. So they are doing these design workshops with programs in person, one-on-one. And then now we're in the refinement stage. We'll move to action planning, and then they'll begin implementing their plan in years 2 and 3. And here's an example of, it's not what a final product looks like, but it's part of the process of what they go through. So when they go through the design workshop, they ask programs what they want, the different type of activity settings, what type of movement and behaviors do you want children to have the opportunity to participate in? And so all that informs what goes into their design plan. So all of that, let's put it into real life. And I'm going to show you some photos from a site here in South Carolina. It's Mega Child Development Center. We have been working with them since 2017. So really before even the statewide launch of Grow Outdoors. And they are one of our demonstration sites, which means as they continue to develop, other childcare programs can come visit them. They can see what this type of environment looks like. Pictures are wonderful, but there's so much more to experience when you're there on site. And so it can be a training location. It can just be a place others visit. And so we have 7 sites that are serving as demonstration sites that are in different phases of implementation at this point. So here is Mega. They are out in Gilbert. It's very rural. And you can see this is 2017. This is their play space. So the sand is very evident. There's a lot of sand. There's 3 kind of manufactured play pieces here. And they had an existing pathway already. So I'm going to show you a close-up. So here's a closer picture of that. So again, there is no shade. There is no coverage in the heat. Lots of sand, lots of manufactured play equipment. They were different in that they had a pathway, because a lot of programs didn't or don't necessarily have a pathway in place. And here's another view from the backside looking forward. They did have some raised bed gardens over here, so that was awesome. And here was their design plan that they received back in 2017. And so if you can just, imagine you were looking from back here, looking this way, the plan took it out way here and back some. So they would move fence lines. So I'm going to show you some today pictures. So this is from that back looking forward. You can see they've added quite a bit of nature. even adding just the little pergola that they will go through. You can't see it closely here, but there's a path, like a secondary pathway that takes them to other settings. You can see they've added coverage. And then right here, it's very, very hard to see behind this tree, is this little playhouse. So they had somebody build this. They didn't buy manufactured. They could have, but they created this awesome little, vertical playhouse, and they have the pretend fire ring in the middle, and they bring out books and they keep in there. Here is, if this is where their pathway ended, if you can see right here, and then they added the double loop. So following best practice, knowing that the double loop is more, increases activity more than the single loop. So they added the second loop, and they created this amazing little drive-through house. And you can't see it here, but there's music play here, but you can see this amazing mound they have added in the back that children love. So here would be from the front. This was what we saw originally, all the sand. So they have made it smaller. They kept the climbing structure. They did add some shade coverage, but they added this deck, this performance stage right here. And it, children will use it for multiple purposes. It's intended to be an area for dramatic play, but children sit on it, they gather there, they bring out books, sometimes they'll draw on it with chalk. The whole idea, though, is if you provide the space, children will take advantage of it. So here is a little video. And so it's just a quick snippet, but the fact that it was there and the props were there, children will be creative and they will move. I didn't choose the snippet where that little boy, when everybody starts to stop, he gets really bossy and says, "Keep dancing," but they have fun and they're creative. Had it been the same original, just the sand with those manufactured play equipment in place, that probably would not have happened. So here's another view, side of the building where they came out. This is a loose parts activity setting. And so it's a very specific type of play. You can see there's lots of wood there that they can build with. And it does have some manufactured pieces as well, but that's really getting to some of that fine motor skills. And as you look to the left there, this is a playhouse in the distance. And here's a closer shot of it, where they have brought out items that they don't necessarily want in the classroom anymore. So they've created this outdoor playhouse, and they'll bring in seasonal items like the hay bales and the pumpkins. And they got very creative here. I mean, you look at the branches on top, you even look at the post, and it is an actual, piece of wood, a tree trunk. They have expanded the raised bed gardens. So they have several raised bed gardens, and they have a couple of in-ground gardens as well. And they have also planted some fruit trees. And then you have the music play, which was on the back side of that little building. So that's another activity setting. So when you think about it so far, they've had the stage, they've had the area where the sand is, they have music play, the pathway, they have gardens, they have loose parts. So there's a whole lot more for those children to engage in than what they previously had. And then here is, from, again, the public health perspective, what we love. Having specific settings like a mound, and it was all boys, these boys have a field day with this mound. They run up, they roll down, they run up, they roll down. It's a lot of fun, and to them, it's play, but it is promoting physical activity. And then, of course, with the pathway, that's usually the first thing children gravitate towards when they come outdoors, is they hop on those tricycles and off they go. And so here's just another little snippet of one, really, really short. Off they go. All right. Just here's some more Here's some more close-up. Here's a vine with grapes growing on one of their arbors. And so, they do have to be mindful of things like, what age group is this serving? Because you can't have this in the infant toddler area. You can't have grapes where they're, because it might present a choking hazard. So they have to be mindful of that. And then here, I think this is just the most wonderful picture of this little boy. This is you can't see the whole area, but that's the fence to the infant toddler area where they've planted plants on top. And this little boy is getting this little syringe and watering the plant. If these things weren't there, this would not be happening. So again, it's about creating the environment so they can engage with nature, they can move more, they have diversity of play and learning. And we say play a lot, but it is play and learning. So right now, programs still mostly use it for unstructured free play twice a day. Another part of what we're trying to get programs to understand is you don't have to go out just twice a day. You can have your circle time outdoors. You can use the gardening for any of your curricular activities. So really trying to push that intentional learning and move beyond just thinking we only need to have free play. We want them to understand they can use it for intentional learning. All right. So from a local level perspective, how can programs use your help, use coalitions or just others in the community? One thing that would help is to share information on why children being outdoors in nature is important. If you can share that with your networks, that's really helpful because childcare programs listen to parents. They follow regulations, but they also are a business and they want to do what makes their families happy. And if families push back on, I don't want my child outdoors, I don't want them to get dirty, I don't want them, to be around bugs, that can be a struggle for some childcare providers because they don't want parents to say, well, I'm going to go somewhere else. So we really need to get information out on why it's important, why children don't need the big, large manufactured play structures, why creating an environment with different activity settings and opportunities to connect with nature provides more value than just the manufactured play equipment. If you know of anybody that has professional skills that we could connect with, that would be helpful. Do you know people that carpenters that can build, platforms, decks? Do you know people who can build sandboxes or concrete installers who can pour a pathway? So, that could be a personal or a professional. Do you just know people with skills that you think we should contact to say, hey, is this something, are you available for hire? Anybody we could connect with that might have a skill that would be helpful to programs at the local level. That would be very helpful. And then if you just know anybody that wants to donate time or materials, do you know organizations that need to do volunteer hours? If you do, we may be able to connect them with a childcare program in your area that has plantings that need to be installed or items that need to be built. Or do you know companies? A good example is if you think of those big spools where they have electrical wire, like if you know a company that has a bunch of those that are empty, those make great tables in the childcare space. So anybody that may have time or materials to donate, if you could connect them with us, that would be much appreciated as well. And then lastly, I will wrap it up with the current application, the 2025 cohort application has been released. So if you have a child in childcare, if you know people in childcare that might be interested, just feel free to share this with them. Just remember they must be an ABC Quality Center. Everything they would need to know about the process is in the information packet. The link to the actual application is in the packet and it will go live on Friday. But the information is out there. The application itself goes live this Friday and it's due November 8th. All right, so that is Grow Outdoors. So hopefully everybody held on through that long presentation and let me know if you have any questions.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Misty, for sharing that information. It feels like really good timing. That application is opening on Friday. You've got the kind of the website is just getting launched and is active. So I'm really thankful for the timing of you being able to share this right now. So like Misty said, it is time to open up the floor to question and answer. Please feel free to throw them in the chat, and I'm happy to share them with Misty and she can answer them before we wrap up. So you shared a lot of helpful information, Misty. The before and after of that site was really amazing. If you could see the reactions, lots of people were putting in their emoji reaction, so they were very excited about it. But one question that I had, you talked a little bit about the shift from talking about this as an obesity prevention strategy to talking about a more sort of holistic value to it. Um, when you're talking about this to early care and education settings, are there any common like questions or misconceptions, any kind of resistance that you feel, any common things that come up? And how do you reframe this so that, because clearly you're making an impact and early care and education centers are buying into it. So any common questions or concerns that come up and how do you address them? I think that might be helpful to community members who maybe are interested in being an advocate for this type of work.
We receive several. A very common concern is, what is licensing going to say? And they're very concerned because it is a regulated system. They want to maintain their
Yeah.
license. They do not want to have a violation on the child care website. They don't want to be on a corrective action plan. So there's a lot of concern. If I do this type of environment, what is licensing going to say? And so we explained that licensing is part of this process. So we've been engaging with childcare licensing, the state director, the fire marshals from the beginning, but it is a
Mm-hmm.
learning curve for everybody.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
so even with these design plans, they go to childcare licensing first. They have to
Oh,
approve
wow.
it. Then when it comes to actually start to install it, they have to get approval again. They have to reach out to licensing and say, I'm going to add this um, area for earth play. And then they might ask very specific questions. What type of material are you going to use? Are you going to keep it covered? How are you going to keep animals out of it? When construction is happening,
Yeah.
where will the children be? So I
Mm-hmm.
think that eases a lot of
Yes.
concern when they know licensing's been in the conversation. We get a lot of questions about the cost.
Mm-hmm.
Because when you see the really pretty, like the one I
Yeah.
showed of Mega, again, it started in 2017. It's now
Mm-hmm.
2024. But when they look at it, they just see it in total and they see huge
Yes.
price tag. And so
Yeah.
that is a concern. What is the cost? The pathway is typically the most expensive, and that varies. So we just talk about, remember, it's incremental. And then
Mm-hmm.
the other concern I would say we get is the parent aspect. My parents don't want their children to get dirty. My parents don't want the children outside around
Yeah.
bugs. And so all we can do at that point is just educate them and give them the resources to educate parents on the
Yeah.
benefits.
Yeah.
And because they, again, they are a business and they want to meet their regulations, but they also don't want to lose business from parents because they're not meeting the need of our
Yeah.
points.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. And I think that is a space where community members and community advocates can really help to just kind of be that voice for this is really valuable and worth the, dirt on their clothes.
Right,
Um,
right. Like, don't send them in white tennis shoes and
yeah,
white shorts and a white t-shirt,
yeah, send them in
But a
clothes to
lot of it,
play.
we have to remember from a parent perspective, sometimes they feel like they're being judged. If my
Yeah,
child comes in not really nice, clean clothes, am
yeah,
I going to be judged as a parent? So it's really a
yeah.
kind of a two-way conversation there,
Hmm.
that helping the parent understand, we just want your child to be able to play and have fun and get dirty. We're not
Yes.
looking at what they come in and judging you as a parent.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. A little bit of compassion for a parent's perspective as well. Yeah, so we did get a couple of questions, Misty, from our attendees. So the first is somebody asked if this model could be used in other settings, so like a school setting or public housing or something like that.
Absolutely. So the Natural Learning Initiative, their website is naturalearning.org. So just one L.
Okay.
They are internationally and nationally known, and they do design for childcare. They have designed for schools, um, parks. I think the Cincinnati Zoo, museums. So the model really can be used anywhere. It's a little
Yeah.
different in terms of what the settings might be and how much naturalization is there. But yes, the
Okay.
concept and the model do apply to other settings.
Awesome. And then somebody also asked, what are you most excited for with Grow Outdoors in 2025?
It was exciting getting it launched in 2024,
Yeah.
but the first year is always rocky. There's
Yeah.
been a lot of learning when you take on new partners and
Mm-hmm.
trying to understand where everybody's coming from. What I look forward to is 2025 is hoping that some of that background that the providers don't see, that we can work out some of those kinks and the whole process starts to flow a little bit easier on the backside. Just the working with partners, knowing what the outcome is going to be, knowing the timeline, who's creating what, that, and then truly just getting that website up and live would be
Yeah.
huge.
Yeah. Yeah, just a central place for people to get all the information about this. Yeah, and it'll be very exciting, I think, to see all of the work that you and the team have done in the background to bring all these partners together so that on the front end you can say things like what you shared earlier that we've already talked with licensing and they're already in this conversation. And so just mitigating up front some of those questions and concerns. So thank you again for those of you who have attended live and those of you watching the recording. Thank you for your time. And thanks to Misty. This was excellent. Really appreciate your expertise on this.
Thank you.